But if we can't get the sugar out of our bloodstream into the cell to make energy, we have to convert that sugar into fat. And this is part of what causes weight gain. Now, it's important to understand, I said back here, I said that one of the things that can contribute to weight gain, aside from too many calories, aside from macronutrient ratio problems, okay, inflammatory diets, which is kind of what we're talking about right now, is nutritional deficiencies. This is key. Why is this key? Because we need nutrients. We need vitamin D, we need chromium, we need zinc, we need magnesium, and we need B vitamins. Okay, a lot of people ask me, Dr. Osborne, what supplements work best for weight loss? It's not so much that they work best for weight loss, it's that what supplements work best to help your body convert your calories into energy. That's what we're after, because if you can't convert your calories into energy, game over. You're going to take that energy and you're going to store it as fat. These are the primary vitamins, minerals that are necessary to convert calories, especially glucose calories, into energy. So remember that. B vitamins, zinc, magnesium, vitamin D, and chromium. Now let me show you why. So we'll come back to our drawing here. Okay. Once you make glucose from the food that you eat, remember I said before, think of this as step one, okay? That glucose hits the bloodstream, that's step two. Step three is it talks to your pancreas, that message. Now this step three, that requires vitamin D. In essence, you have more vitamin D receptors on the pancreas than anywhere else, and those vitamin D receptors are what are necessary to help the pancreas know when it's time to make insulin. So if you don't have a vitamin D adequacy, if your vitamin D levels are low, you actually can become insulin resistant and have weight gain as a result of just this one simple nutritional deficiency. And this is a super easy blood test to ask your doctor to measure. But then once we have those vitamin D receptors being engaged to properly make insulin, well, this requires zinc. Okay, zinc is like the centerpiece of insulin. It holds insulin together, the mineral itself does. And so you could be zinc deficient, and so what happens is you don't make insulin as effectively or as efficiently. So zinc is very important in this step, we'll call this step 4, which is insulin production. But then insulin has to communicate to the insulin receptor. And that insulin receptor, we're at a room here. Let's make a little bit of room here. Let's shrink this up. That insulin receptor is made out of chromium, but it's also made out of vitamin B3. Chromium's nickname is the glucose tolerance factor. So that receptor is made out of chromium and vitamin B3. So if you're deficient in these two nutrients, even if you're making enough insulin because you have enough zinc, you might have a problem with that zinc or that insulin communicating to that receptor, which again, this is where we require chromium and vitamin B3. And then once that glucose is allowed to come into the cell, so if we call this number 5 over here, to make energy, that's where this step right here requires B vitamins and magnesium in a very, very big way. It requires magnesium and B vitamins. So again, this is why I come back to zinc, vitamin D, B vitamins, chromium are critical for your ability to be successful at losing weight, but more importantly at generating energy, because people that can't lose weight generally are what? They're very tired. They're mentally fatigued. They have brain fog. Their muscles don't function as well for them to exercise, and this is why. There's an energy deprivation because they can't convert their carbohydrates or their food into that energy. And again, when you can't convert your food into energy, you store it as fat and you have no energy, right? You have plenty of energy, what we call, and if you've studied physics, there's two kinds of energy, right? There's kinetic energy and there's potential energy. Fat is potential energy. Potential means you don't have access to it yet, but it's there, right? Whereas kinetic is it's active energy. It's energy in motion. We want kinetic energy. We want to drive and generate that energy, that ATP. And again, grain, sugar, dairy, excessive carbohydrates, these three are excessive carbohydrates. This one kind of categorizes these three together. Okay, so understand this is the biochemistry of how your body generates energy. And then we have this one down here that we haven't even gotten into, which is the chemicals in food. The chemicals in food are a huge problem today. One of the reasons why I harp all the time on eating organically. A lot of people say organic's too expensive. I say no, the cost of obesity to your medical bill is too expensive. Eating organic is really relatively cheap, especially when you consider the cost of the food and the quality of life that you're going to have. You can't purchase quality of life. Well, I guess you can. You can purchase it with good behavior. But the chemicals in the food, oftentimes these chemicals are referred to as obesogens. Okay, obesogens. Now this is a diagram. I pulled it, from a research study. You can see down here, environmental obesogens and their impact on susceptibility to obesity. This is actually published in the Journal of Endocrinology, and it was recently published here in 2020. So here is what we know right now about obesogens. Now, what are obesogens? Obesogens are chemicals that we find in our food and in our environment that have these different mechanistic effects on how we can gain weight and make it how it can be harder to lose weight. So if you see here, the obesogen in the center, one of the effects or impacts of obesogens is it creates what are called epigenetic modifications. These epigenetic modifications are basically it alters which genes turn on and off, okay? And some of these genes favor the expression of adipocyte commitment. What's an adipocyte? This is fat. It's a fat cell. So these genes favor the expression of adipocyte commitment, in essence, storing of fat. You can see that also the obesogens activate a genetic receptor called a retinoic acid receptor. That's what RXR stands for, but that's beside the point. The bottom line is when you activate that RXR aggressively, you can get the development of dysfunctional, unhealthy fat cells. That's what that means. So dysfunctional, unhealthy fat cells begin to develop. We also know that obesogens increase adipocyte fat cells. Again, increase adipocytes' ability to differentiate. In essence, it increases the quantity of fat cells that you start to develop. And we know this is especially true if you're exposed to obesogens earlier in life. So the more of these you're exposed to earlier in life, so parents pay attention because this is for your kids. The more you expose your children to these obesogens, the harder you're going to make it for them in their life to basically to maintain good, healthy weight, okay? And because what happens early in life is they increase the quantity of adipocytes they produce. Makes it easier for them to gain weight later in life. We also know that obesogens can interfere with hormones and other signaling pathways, such as estrogen, GLP-1, etc., which leads to an altered metabolism, leading to increased fat development and fat storage, okay? And then we also know, we're not done yet, that they alter the gut microbiome composition and favor, okay, of obesity-related bugs, obesity-related microbes, okay? So these are the common biochemical understanding of what we know about obesogenic chemicals. Now, all that being said, so there's a lot of different mechanisms at work there. What are obesogenic chemicals? Like, what are we worried about here? Okay, let's kind of make a list. Pesticides. This is why, might help if I spell that right for you. There we go, pesticides. This is why I recommend organic. Right? Organic, you alleviate yourself from some of those, or grow your own garden. That would be another alternative or another option. So pesticides, we know that plastics, now many of you have seen this term BPA, and you're seeing more and more like BPA free, this, that, and the other. BPA is only one type of chemical in plastics. There are a lot of chemicals in plastics that are obesogens. So even if you're using plastics that are BPA free, throw them in the garbage. Get you some glass, get you some ceramic, get you some stainless steel. Get away from using those plastics. We know there are other substances, chemicals in cosmetics. Ladies, if you use, traditional cosmetics with parabens, many of them have plastics or phthalates in them. Those are also obesogens. We know, and it's not just cosmetics, it's soaps and lotions and shampoos. So a lot of the things that you might use for your hygiene, for the way that you look, right? These contain the potential for obesogenic compounds that, again, can make it much more challenging for you to normalize your weight. So you want to get these things out of your life as much as you possibly can. I said earlier in the show, I said I was going to help you understand that masks are actually can make you gain weight. We see a lot of people gaining weight during this lockdown, and part of it is because of the lockdown, the gyms are closed, but another part of it is dependent upon the type of mask you wear. If you wear the traditional, surgeon mask, the blue masks, those typical doctor masks, those are sprayed with an obesogenic chemical called PFOA. That is a type of fluoride-based compound that is an obesogen. We know it does some of these components up here. It alters hormones. So you're breathing that in directly. And we also know, on a side note, that people that wear this kind of mask, breathing in those perfluoroalkyl substances, that it suppresses the immune system. So not only can it make you gain weight, but it can also suppress your immune system, which is the opposite effect that you're trying to achieve by wearing the mask in the first place. So if you're going to wear the mask, you make sure it's a cloth one that's not washed in soaps or shampoos that contain obesogens. Make sure it's not one of these medical ones that contain PFOAS compounds on it. Hey, don't forget to check out the rest of the series right here. Make sure you hit subscribe below. And as always, thanks for tuning in.